Well, thank you guys for making time to join today. I really, really appreciate it. Um, and just a reminder, if we could keep our microphones on mute when we're not speaking, when we're not doing anything. And if you do have a question or anybody just pop in, feel free to type anything in the chat box or so great. We talked a little bit today just the Rope Access business. This whole process has Brandon was talking recently about how become a rope access technician. That's really just kind of the beginning of the equation. Having a rope access certification about just business aspect rope access are and what it takes to be a success as a rope access technician in the field. So we're happy that you're here to talk to us today. And PMI is super happy to be able to sponsor this. So Brandon, I'd like to just hand it over to you and you can introduce Grant and get us rolling if you would.
Yeah, so we were losing you a little bit there in and out, but I think we got the general gist. I started talking to Louis a few months ago, probably November, December-ish time, like, hey, do you want somebody to kind of shadow you? And I'm looking to learn a little bit. And we started talking and was like, yeah, let's create this rope-based business collective. And it's kind of a way for people to learn about starting a business, but then we kind of decided, hey, we need it for people who don't just want to start a business, but people who want to learn about the industry in itself. So you will be the first person in a line of hopefully many that can talk about their industry. But this is Grant Deitchman. He is a technical manager, hiring manager for Rope Partner out of Santa Cruz, California. Hired me back in June of 2019, I believe, going into my third season with Rope Partner. But Grant, if you don't mind giving us a little spiel about who you are and a little bit of your history.
Yeah, so I started, I had a couple of friends, good buddies that had gotten into rope access, met a person on the river actually, and said, oh, I work on wind turbines. And like, what are those? And said, yeah, we do rope access. And well, what is that? And so he started to explain it to us, and a couple of my good friends jumped the next week to go get their SPRAT certification, and then proceeded to apply for Rope Partner and get on a job with them. And so during that time, I owned a restaurant, and so I wasn't interested in shifting careers, but a couple of years went by and I was ready to get out of the restaurant business and sold that. Took a year off and was kind of wondering what I wanted to do next. And I had watched my friends over a couple of years working for Rope Partner and decided, yeah, that seems kind of exciting. I can do that for a year or two until I figure out my life. And so I went and got my SPRAT certification in 2009.
Lost you to your mute real quick.
Nope. All right. It got me now. Where'd you lose me? So
got your SPRAT certification in 2009.
Yeah, so got my SPRAT certification in 2009, got hired on by Rope Partner, and yeah, started working out in the field as a rope access technician. And then 6 months later, got my level 2, 6 months later, got my level 3, and then started supervising for Rope Partner out there, traveling around the country, enjoyed it. And we started growing as a company at that time. When I started, I think we had about 12 technicians. A couple of years later, we were at a little over 20 techs, and that's when a position opened up to be the technician manager as we were starting to grow. And so I accepted that position, went to the dark side, and here I am 10 years after that now, still doing it. We've got a little over 100 technicians now, and yeah, it's been an interesting ride. So, but definitely love the company and the industry.
Awesome. 100 techs. I didn't know that's how many Rope Partner was up to now. So what kind of people, I know the answer for me, are drawn to this line of work? I kind of see a theme when I'm out in the field.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, there's I'd say we get somewhere between 250 to 300 applicants every year. And there's kind of a couple of different types of people. If you were to try to generalize that, apply for this work, there's people who love rope access and want to just work on in different fields within rope access, and so want to kind of bounce around to, whether it's petrochem or structural or wind, whatever it is. So they're drawn to Rope Partner because of the rope access portion. And then I'd say more so for the kind of our successful technicians, longer term, it's ones that like the lifestyle. Rope access is something that they enjoy, but they also enjoy the actual work we do, because, as you know, rope access is kind of the bus that you take to work, and then it's time to go to work. And so, yeah, you get a lot of I guess, outdoor enthusiasts who also like to recreate outdoors very often, like yourself, Brandon, with caving and others with with climbing. That this type of work, and specifically at Rope Partner, and the seasonality complements their outdoor lifestyle.
You went on mute.
Okay. So yeah, say people that like outdoor activities where you have a job where you can have chunks of time off in between work, so you can actually go do activities outside of work. Work hard to play hard. So.
Awesome. You're a little
Grant,
close.
I'm super curious. Are there any kinds of, like, when people apply to be a rope access technician, are there specific people you are like, that personality or characteristic, I just don't want to go there?
I'm sorry, cutting out a little bit. As far as just see if I heard you correctly, a question about a certain type of personality or type of person that wants to come work at Rope Partner. Is that correct?
That you specifically lean against, that you look at him and say, no, I don't want that guy as a technician.
Gotcha. Honestly, I wouldn't say there's anything specific. I'd say more that they kind of fit a mold of, it's kind of a unique individual that, has hopefully some trade skills, some history, because we do, work with power tools, and kind of fiberglass can be an art in itself. So somebody who has had experience with kind of a craftsman type of background, and also somebody who likes and can afford to have a flexible schedule and not work, 50 weeks a year, because winter time work is at a little bit, it's limited a little bit due to Mother Nature.
Got you muted.
Okay. I think it, mutes itself here, I guess, if I don't stay on it on the computer. So there's I'd say people that would not fit the mold for Rope Partner, to your question, would be ones who end up, if they want to work, say 320 days a year round, do not want to work 12 or 14-hour days, do not want to travel, then, and also maybe don't like working out in the elements, because we do work in, 10 below up to 110 with 100% humidity almost. So you have to be willing to go to the extreme temperatures and work long days to get the job done. So.
Awesome. So when I first learned about wind, I'd never even seen a wind turbine, really knew how they worked or any of that. So for someone who is just ignorant to the facts, can you just tell us what a wind turbine is and how it works?
Sure. So a wind turbine is, kind of based off of originally the old windmills that used to bring, power pumps or whatever for water or machinery. But basically it converts wind kinetic energy into electrical energy, I guess, in its most simplistic form. So they have blades up there, and they're getting turned. Their airfoils, just like a sailboat is able to sail across the water. These blades capture the wind like a sail does, and turns this wind turbine around, which in turn goes through a gearbox, ups the RPMs, and goes into a generator to generate that electricity, convert that wind kinetic energy into electrical energy, at which point it sends it down the tower to a transformer, and then goes out into the grid, substations, and then a grid. So yeah, just using the wind to create electricity through a generator.
Cool. So now that we know about it, what kind of training might be involved? I know you mentioned SPRAT, but for Rope Partner, maybe specifically, what do you guys require to get out there and start doing work?
Yeah, good question. So specifically for Rope Partner, having a Rope Access certification, IRATA or SPRAT, is a requirement to apply, because that's what we do primarily, is Rope Access work. So having that certification, you also have to have a CPR and first aid at a minimum certification or above, like an EMT or a first responder, because you are out there working in some remote locations, and you need to have some BLS skills if you're the only other individual maybe that can get to your partner in the event of an emergency. It is OSHA, just like with any other power generation, and pretty much everything else out there has its heavy hand in the wind industry. So at a bare minimum, an OSHA 10-hour certification is a requirement as well. And then that's enough to kind of get people in the door. And then there's another series of probably about 8 different certifications that we specifically look to do, but we do that training. So somebody would be offered a position, and they come in through for a 12-day onboarding initially, where we practice different rescues, go through confined space training, a handful of other trainings at certification, but that's something that we'll provide. And then from there, they get out and shadow on an active team on a project to kind of get more of that in-field training, and then they're released into the pool to go be a full-fledged technician out there.
I know you mentioned earlier that it's a little slow in the wintertime. Can you elaborate on just what the busy season is, and if somebody were to get into this line of work, why they might like what times they work versus not?
Sure. So the busy season, we primarily work in North America. So with that, we have, I'd say May through October. So May to November is our busy season. That's when weather is pretty good. There's a lot of wind in the Midwest. And so those sub-freezing temperatures, we work with a lot of chemicals. It's hard for them to actually react and do their job in cold temperatures. So it's that summertime work, May through November, that everybody's kind of all hands on deck. And in the wintertime, in the inverse, November through April there's not as much work to be had. So a lot of our technicians take advantage of that. They will go out and play, travel, whatever it is they want to do for 6 months, because in this 6-month work window that we have, I'd say about 150 to 180 days is the average that a technician will work in this 6-month window, to schedule of 5 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And that usually translates to about 2,000 to 2,600 hours within half the year. So it's kind of a full-time job crammed into half of the calendar year. So.
Yeah, it really is. I think I added it up one time, and it was about 40 hours if I was to divide it into 50 working weeks, crammed into 150 days or 160 days, something like that. So you don't have to necessarily do fiberglass, which that is the bread and butter of a rope tech and wind, but what are some of the other scopes of work, and how do they work within Rope Partner and wind in general?
Yeah, so other scopes of work, I'll generalize in wind. So there's a lot of site technicians that can go work on a wind farm, and for lack of better terms, they're kind of like your car mechanic that keeps your car on the road. Anything from your oil changes to electrical troubleshooting to normal maintenance schedules. And so within wind, you can go get a certification and accreditation through, I think there's like 26 different wind tech schools in the US right now. And you can go get a 6-month to 2-year course and get hired on to keep these turbines running. So you go to work every day and climb up there and do whatever this maintenance is. We at Rope Partner get called in when the site technicians cannot get to something that needs to be repaired. So yeah, like you mentioned, Brandon, fiberglass is our bread and butter. The blades are made out of fiberglass. They get struck by lightning quite a bit, sometimes thousands of strikes in the course of a couple hour storm. So, you know, they get damaged and we have to get called out to repair. In addition to that, anything else that a site technician cannot access on a wind turbine is where we come in with our ropes. So that could be a tower cleaning, for instance. If there's a gearbox that has a failure and leaks fluid down the side of the turbine, we can go out there and clean it up with some simple green and a rag. If there's you know, these turbines, they sway and move in the wind a little bit, and so over time the internal components can wear. So there's platforms and ladders on the inside attached to the tower walls with, you know, bolts and hardware. Sometimes those will shear off, and so we'll get called in to extract those bolts and replace hardware. It's another big scope. In addition, I mentioned earlier that the generated electricity is brought down from the generator up tower down to the transformer, what have you, down tower and out to the grid. That transition between up tower 300 feet up and the down tower, there's a bus system. And so that's a series of cables or aluminum stock or whatever. Different turbines have different types of bus systems that carry that electricity, high voltage electricity down. Sometimes those will rattle or break, maybe installed incorrectly. Torque values will loosen and we'll have arc flashes. Some instance there where you can no longer get the generated electricity.
Got you muted.
So we'll get called out there to replace these bus systems, basically, and different components of these cables or aluminum stock bars or whatever. So it can be from that to, you know, honestly, sometimes there's stickers or plastic left on a turbine when these things are erected in new construction. They'll put these up over a couple of days, and it's like they get something up there and, oh shoot, we forgot to take that sticker off and it's 300 feet up and we can't get to it now. So we'll get called in to pull stickers off of the side of a nacelle. So yeah, it's really anything that a site technician cannot access. So.
What do you find anchorages to be like on turbines?
I would say very solid anchor selection. So when these turbines are erected, the up in the nacelle, there's a giant gearbox and a generator, and so on those they have lifting eyes from cranes to be able to lift these components up and place them in the top of the turbine where they bolt them all together to make it functional. So we have giant lifting eyes for cranes that we can anchor our ropes to. There's bed plates. So yeah, just a lot of steel structure up there. Lots of good anchor selections. Depending on the turbine type and where you're trying to access, yeah, sometimes there's a fair amount of redirecting or getting creative as to how to get it out. But they are, for all intent and purpose, very simple anchor solutions in a wind turbine.
So piggybacking off of that, can you explain the process of getting onto a blade and like what do you do when you show up at a turbine?
Yeah, so if you look at a day of work and then getting into position to work, let's say for a fiberglass repair on the blade, which again is our bread and butter, you show up at the base of the turbine and you shut it down. So there's controls down tower to actually power down the turbine, stop it from spinning, and so then it's just kind of sitting idle in the wind. One technician will climb a ladder, get all suited up, get in his rope access gear, climb up the ladder to the top, about 250 to 320 feet, depending on the turbine. And then they'll lower down a chain hoist usually to haul up the rest of their rope access gear, their ropes, everything else that they'll actually need. Once that gear is hoisted up tower, then they'll find those solid anchors, anchor in with their ropes, deploy their ropes, lower them out over the edge, over the front of the nose cone of the wind turbine, at which point the rope tails will touch the ground, and their partner down tower can go ahead and secure those, make sure that they won't get tangled up, because we do work in windy areas, so you do have a lot of rope management to handle. And that technician up tower then can go ahead and break into his rope access system and rappel down the blade. The blades are kicked out a little bit, and so sometimes you kind of muscle your way over to the leading edge of the blade because they're pitched out, say from a vertical position a little bit, or you can have your partner on the ground help pull you with your rope tails to get into position, at which point you establish a ring line around the blade to hold your position and are ready to haul up your tools and get to work.
So this kind of goes with levels of advancement, but what does the ground guy, the second guy there, what is his job besides rope management?
Yeah, good question. So running with the fiberglass scenario where we have the repair technician up on the blade, and then we work in teams of two most of the time. And so you have your second partner, the ground support down there, who's also a rope access technician. But they start out on the ground and they're outside of rope management. They're also responsible for getting the tools and the materials up to the blade repair technician. So we'll set up a haul line with a bucket, and they will be
Muted.
They'll be hauling up throughout different stages of the repair, different sets of tooling, be it grinders, sanders, Dremel tools, whatever it is. They'll be cutting out the fiberglass and mixing the chemicals, the resin down tower, and hauling those up, impregnating the glass, bringing those up to the blade repair technician, and really just managing, the whole workstation down there in order to get the guy who's stuck on blade everything they need to do to do that repair successfully.
All right. So wind turbines, green energy. So is it true that this is all green and clean and there's no nasty stuff involved?
Yep, 100% green and clean. It's just like working in a shower. No, it is green energy, and I think that's a really good point you bring up. Sure, it is a renewable energy source. So you aren't burning some fossil fuels in order to produce electricity, but by no means does that not mean that there are natural resources needed in order to build and construct these wind turbines. And, there's still, oils and grease and everything. It is a piece of machinery that keep these going. So yeah, you get into some turbines and it is a dirty, greasy job. It really depends on the turbine's age and how well it's been maintained throughout its life cycle by the owners or the contractor or whatever to keep that turbine going. So yes, it is a green renewable source. But they do still use chemicals. Fiberglass repair is you need chemicals, fiberglass itself, and the resin. So yeah, it's not 100% green and clean. But if you look in the grand scheme of things for other sources of power generation, it's definitely up there.
Who plans each job, Grant, and is it done before you get there?
Who plans each job? So basically the way it works is the owners of these wind farms and of these turbines will usually do inspections every year, either from the ground with a camera or just visual with binoculars. And they go around and they scan the blades to look for damages, again, primarily being lightning or erosion, just natural erosion from these blades cutting through the wind. You know, they look like they're.
We lost you again.
Yeah, so these blades are moving about 180 to 200 miles an hour through the wind. So there's a lot of erosion from sand and dirt particulates or whatever that might be in the air. So the sites will inspect these blades on a regular basis and then compile a list, and often with photos of the types of damages, at which point we'll assess the severity of the damage and therefore the urgency in which we recommend that they should repair it so they don't have a catastrophic failure or need to shut down their turbine. And then it goes into our project managers, at which point we'll coordinate with the site to figure out the scheduling based on when we have technicians available and when the proper weather windows are, and we'll start to schedule out. That usually happens for us ahead of the busy season. You know, starting in January, February, we kind of have our list of jobs that we'll have for the next 6 months. So yeah.
Awesome. So, not that there's ever a short of things trying to kill you in this line of work or in rope access in general. Can you inform us of some of the hazards of working in wind and some of the mitigations that are put into place to avoid incidents?
Sure. So I would say, to be honest, at least within Rope Partner, our largest exposure and risk is driving to and from the wind farm, just naturally, vehicular accidents or incidents. But
Muted.
Actually doing the work. Some of the hazards, I'd say one of the greatest hazards that we would encounter would be our weather and our environmental challenges. So high winds, low winds, shifting winds, direction as far as, you know, making sure that you're in a stable position out there and not getting blown around like a ping pong ball in a wind tunnel. And lightning can be a big one. So fortunately, there are a lot of lightning systems in place, monitoring systems. Technicians monitor themselves with weather apps, as well as there's notifications that come from the wind farm sites that we work at. And they have set parameters of 50 miles or 30 miles away for lightning strikes, which is, you know, get off the ropes, get down tower, and get out of that lightning rod. So weather is a big hazard, I would say. It's pretty easily mitigated, but you have to stay on top of it and be paying attention and not caught off guard. With rope access itself, sure, it's always looking at your whole rope system from your structural anchor down to your point, and also what's happening with your tails, your rope tails, and making sure that those aren't getting bound up in the event that a rapid egress is necessary or a rescue would be necessary, being able to have a clear exit. You know, outside of those hazards within rope access, we are working at height. So all work at height hazards are applicable. If you're up there a couple 100 feet up and, you know, you drop a carabiner or something, that could be a really bad situation if it were to land on somebody below. So hazard zones are strictly enforced while working on a wind turbine. So yeah, dropped items, I'd say, would be another. And outside of that, it's really ergonomic hazards. So we do work when we get there. You are on a rope. Sometimes you're positioning. You got to be very conscientious of how you position and try to avoid soft tissue injuries, et cetera. So it's really just about being smart, going slow, thinking things through, and really trying to mitigate all these potential hazards, which is very manageable to do. You just, it's human error often that could result in an incident.
I'd just like to say, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to raise your hand or type your questions into the chat box. Grant, just asking real quickly, what are your parameters as far as wind is concerned? Obviously, turbines are in windy places. You mentioned that. Do you have any limitations as far as wind is concerned?
Sure. Yeah, so it's a couple of factors. It depends on what scope of work you're doing, i.e., if you're doing, say, a blade repair. Are you at a stage where you have a grinder in hand grinding out meters worth of glass, and therefore have a lower wind threshold? Or are you at the end stages of repair applying paint or gel coat to the top? And so those are some, I say, scope specific variables, which, those cutoffs, it's hard to say an actual speed because it depends on the type of wind, right? So a gusty wind can be much more challenging to work in. Let's say a 2 meter a second wind that jumps to 10 meters a second every minute or two can be much more challenging to work on because it starts to get that blade into a little bit of a bucking action, as opposed to maybe a steady, 10 or 12 meter a second wind. So the type of wind as well as the wind speeds definitely affect, our ability to work. Our absolute max cutoff of, hey, you cannot be out on a blade is dictated by the wind turbine and the manufacturer. So when you lock out a turbine, you drive these pins in to prevent that rotor from rotating, obviously, and a mechanical lockout. And so those have a limit of how much wind.
Muted.
Those have a limitation of how hard the wind can be blowing before there could be a potential failure with the mechanics of that wind turbine. So that lockout speed is our absolute cutoff. And that could be anywhere from 12 meters a second up to 18 meters a second. And then everything in below that is technician's discretion, depending on what they're doing for the day.
A few things. I've worked for Rope Partner for a couple of years now. They do support their technicians if they call a stop to work, as should all companies. If you don't feel safe doing what you're doing, you shouldn't do it. Two, going back to some of the hazards involved with working, it's not always just your hazards or your partner's hazards. I've had people come up in ATVs and just lift up my danger do not enter tape and drive right in and say, hey, how you doing? Don't know that it happened with Rope Partner. I've heard of a farmer one time climbing the 300-foot wind turbine in his coveralls and just popping up there like, hey guys, what are you doing? So you have to watch out for other people just as much as you have to watch out for yourself, because common sense is not necessarily a common virtue all throughout. But piggybacking off of that, do you have any horror stories, or maybe not horror stories, but things that could have been prevented, or near misses, maybe not necessarily with Rope Partner, just that you've heard of?
Yeah, so just kind of off of that, one of a story that always brings a little chuckle to me is you mentioned farmers or people in ATVs maybe just coming up and ignoring our established hazard zones. And yeah, you're right. The common sense is not a virtue of all. It's interesting when you apply it to cattle, perhaps. And so a lot of these wind turbines, most of them are in large areas, either for on ranches or in farmlands. And so there's still agricultural or ranching happening all around these wind turbines. So we had a technician up there a couple of years back who was on rope, and his tails got tangled up in a longhorn horns and started going away. So that was a little interesting to try to coax that.
Got you muted.
Yeah, so a little interesting to try to bring that, try to get those ropes untangled from those bulls' horns and not have them run too far the wrong direction. So that's always one that, yeah, could have been bad, could have been worse, but in retrospect, you can go back and look at it and get a good laugh out of it. Kind of something odd.
Yeah, that's a story I hadn't actually heard yet. That's a pretty good one. But I
Yeah.
guess moving away from, danger and hazards, what are some of the success stories for rope partner techs or yourself or something like that? People started at the bottom and that are currently with rope partner or have done something great.
Yeah, so at Rope Partner, we are a growing smaller company. So within that, we are able to remain agile and I also think provide opportunities for our technicians. So I think one thing that sets us apart from a lot of other rope access companies and potentially industries is that we like to bring people in from the ground floor and develop them as a WindCorps technician for Rope Partner and try to create a long-lasting permanent position throughout their rope access career. So we have everybody in the management team that's in an operational or safety or blade services area has been a technician that has moved their ranks, moved through the ranks up to supervisor in the field as a field supervisor and technician.
Muted.
And then stepped over into a management role over time. So yeah, so that's every one of us in there has been a technician in the field, which I also think it's great because you can relate to the field and have that experience and knowledge to pull from and be relatable. So yeah, there's quite a few of us who've been here for many, many years, well over a decade, and have had those opportunities. And as our company continues to grow, there's just more opportunities, and we are very intentional about, as we grow and or have to backfill positions, opening up to the technician base first, and as a last resort, we'll go outside the company. So yeah, I think there's good opportunities there for people, and we have technicians that don't want to go. We have some technicians who've been around for 15 years or more and don't want to work in the office or go to that 9 to 5 grind, and so they can continue to move up the ranks, and then it kind of gets more into that lifestyle, I would say, kind of advancement where you get some more flexibility to meet that lifestyle of yours and start to become more of a mentor and a trainer in the field, and utilize in that capacity to maintain that longevity.
As you say, there are a lot of opportunities in wind. Grant, how did you end up where you are?
So I said I kind of stumbled into wind, just meeting somebody on the river, and I got out there and I loved the work. I liked the travel. I liked the different parts of the country I went to go see. I liked the hard work, pulling 12 or 14-hour days, in the pay and the overtime and double time that went along with it, and so I worked a lot. I came in and I worked almost double what an average technician would work in my first year, and just kept trying to work and learn. And I think we were kind of at that right point of size of the company where we needed to get some more support for the technicians and kind of a liaison between the field and the office. And so threw my hat in the rink and kind of got to where I am, and it's been a good run here. So still continuing to enjoy it. Never a dull moment.
So I have a two-part question here. First, what kind of in-house trainings do you offer? And then two, what are the levels of training that you need to advance within? So being a worker versus fiberglass 1 or 2, or go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I would say outside of, we have annual trainings that we need to do just to be in the industry. But outside of those, there are 2 primary arenas that we look at for advancement for technicians. That is fiberglass training, as well as moving up in WindCorps. And so So WindCorps, what that is all of our technicians are WindCorps technicians. And most of the time we work on a job, it's a team of 2 technicians. There can be multiple teams of 2 technicians on a wind farm at the same time. So maybe we have 3 or 4 or 5 wind turbines shut down daily with the same amount of teams. Coming into the company, everybody is a WindCorps worker. And then from there with a SPRAT level 2, which we do we have in-house training for SPRAT level 2 or for SPRAT levels. Then they have the opportunity to become a WindCorps lead. And that way you can lead a team on a wind turbine. And then from there, you advance up to becoming a WindCorps supervisor, which requires a SPRAT level 3. And that way you can run a whole job site and a whole project with multiple teams on it. That advancement throughout WindCorps is driven by a mentorship packet, a pretty robust mentorship program where we will place
Muted.
we will place you with our in-field trainers out there, and the right kind of pairing, the mentoring supervisors to try to get through this mentorship packet and advance over the years, moving up. So that's kind of a lot of in-field training on the WindCorps side, coupled with SPRAT trainings in order to have that rope access certification to run a team or a wind farm. On the other side, fiberglass being our bread and butter. When people come in, once they're hired for their initial 12-day onboarding, there's a in-house fiberglass training for a few days, which is just the kind of basics of, hey, this is fiberglass, this is how you use it, these are the toolings that we use, etc. And then again, there's a whole nother mentorship program where people are getting experience out in the field on the job training, doing different stages of the repair, at which point they get enough experience and they come back in to our office and go to a fiberglass 2 level training. And at the end of that fiberglass level 2 training, they go back out and it's more in the field training to sign them off as a fiberglass beginner lead technician. Once you're a beginner lead technician, it's all about the different types of repairs that you're going to get on, and that comes down to what jobs we'll place people on with, again, which types of instructors or mentors will be out there to give them that fiberglass experience needed for the in-field training. And there's 4 different levels of fiberglass leads that people advance through throughout their career in Rope Partner. So yeah, those are the 2 primary kind of training categories and advancement areas within Rope Partner. And it's all kind of a self-driven, people who can bring their skills to the table and are motivated to move up. That kind of sets the pace at which people advance.
Did I understand you to say that you do your own in-house rope access training as well?
Yep, correct. So yeah, we bring all of our technicians back in-house for their rope access training, as well as external. We do offer external trainings as well.
I'm a big believer in training the people that are going to work for you, but it doesn't seem to be being done much. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I feel.
Muted.
We lost you.
Thanks. Yeah, so I feel even before somebody is employed by us, our external trainings, if somebody signs up for a SPRAT course and chooses Rope Partner, I think it's a great tool to be able to get to know somebody and see them in the training. And also, if somebody's interested in applying for Rope Partner, it's an opportunity for them to kind of learn the company and get to talk to the trainers who are also some of our WindCorps supervisors about the job, about the work, and really start to understand the kind of the dynamics of the company. And then, yeah, I think, I think we have a really great training program for our SPRAT trainings. We have really solid trainers, and it is nice because in our trainings, we go a little bit above and beyond the SPRAT trainings, or the requirements for SPRAT, because we want our technicians out there working with our peers to be incredibly solid and really have the skill sets to be efficient. So we spend a lot of time on more tips and tricks and maybe additional kind of scenarios outside of what's needed for an evaluation. So yeah, I think it's incredibly valuable because we can get in and kind of also cater the SPRAT requirements for evaluation to say, hey, this is how you're actually going to apply it to a wind turbine, and while you actually go to work, to try to help it resonate and kind of click home a little bit and sink in a little bit more.
So if you hire somebody in with the certification, do you do anything extra with them?
Yeah, so yes, so there are a lot of different training companies out there where people can get trained, and everybody has a certification, so we understand that baseline of all right, you were able to do these different different scenarios and rope access skills and demonstrate them successfully. So we know that when somebody comes in, we spend that 12 days of onboarding. The vast majority of that is doing a lot of rope access and repetition, showing different ways to do rescues, and also very often showing different rescues that people will not have been exposed to in SPRAT, depending on what level of SPRAT they came into, because you might be experiencing that out in the field. So the onboarding is actually still a vetting process. We don't say, you have a SPRAT cert, you can go do this job. We say, you have a SPRAT cert, you can come show us that you can do this job with additional training and vetting and onboarding.
That's super.
I know some of the trainings that I have not get to experience with other companies, I've worked for about 4, is long rope rescue, which makes sense for what we do and for a lot of other jobs. It's not necessarily the same to do a pickoff or a rescue on a line when there's 300 feet of rope above you, because there's a lot of rope stretch. They're static ropes, but you get a long enough rope, it's going to stretch. I've also done confined space rescues. I've done those in turbines training, and I've done those in-house. So those are some of the cool trainings that I've done with a rope partner that you don't necessarily see everywhere else. And then, so we've talked about a lot. Is it good? Are you good to go into kind of how pay scale works, what you might get paid for driving or travel, and overtime and double time, and how that all works with rope partner?
Sure. So let's see, to keep it as concise as possible, we are a California-based company, and so regardless of where technicians live or where they work, we follow California's HR and labor and pay laws, which is awesome as an employee. And so basically 7 days in a week. So the first 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday.
Muted.
So the first 5 days of a week, Monday through Friday, you hit overtime on a daily basis after 8 hours, and you go into double time after 12 hours. On Saturday, you start your day out in overtime and then hit double time after 12 hours. And on Sunday, same thing, you start in overtime, but you hit double time after 8 hours. And when our technicians are out in the field, you're guaranteed work for 6 days a week. The 7th day is optional, either for the site to say, hey, I don't have any site personnel to support you, you need to take the day off, or for the technicians to say, hey, we have had no weather standby, we're exhausted, we want a day off. So that's up to the discretion of either the our customer or for the team. I mentioned standby, weather standby. So we do work in windy areas. There are storms, whatever else Mother Nature might want to throw at you that will prevent you from going to work. So in that scenario, we pay something called a standby rate, which is 3/4 of your hourly. And that is given to you for 8 hours for a day that, say, you can't go into work. So if you wake up and it's raining outside, work is called off by 6 a.m. They say don't come in, or even sometimes the night before they say don't come in tomorrow. You get at least 8 hours of standby pay for that day to go whatever it is that you like to do to recreate on a effective day off. So that's one type of rate. Additionally, there's a travel rate. So we fly to the majority of jobs, or fly, and you know, when COVID hit, we switched to driving.
Muted.
So now we're you know, flying or driving to jobs, and so your travel from your home to your job site is paid at travel rate, which is California minimum wage. Which keeps going up every year here, up 15, and all overtime and double time, it's still applicable on your travel days. In addition to that, there's travel pay every morning. So our hotels are usually anywhere between 20 minutes to maybe an hour and a half from the wind farm. So we start usually on site at 7 a.m. at the wind farm. So that time ahead of it, you have to drive there. That's paid at a travel rate. And then when you set foot on the wind farm, you switch over to your full work rate. And then at the end of your work day, you go back to travel rate to go back to the hotel. And then often there's admin, which admin is also 3/4 of your full work rate, 3/4 of your hourly full work rate. And that's for things like you have to fill out your time card, or maybe some job trackers. You have to fill out your timesheet and your daily progress and safety report. Maybe you have to update your JSA. Maybe you have to run to Lowe's or Home Depot to get more sandpaper or gloves. Anything that's work related outside of the wind farm that has to be done is an admin pay. And then lastly, there's also reporting. We do the work, but our customers can't see the work we do because it's up in the air and they're not sitting there. So our deliverable to the clients is the report. And so they're pretty robust reports showing the different stages throughout the repair. And so that report creation, from putting all your pictures together and writing up your descriptions, is something that technicians will do back at home or back at the hotel. And that's also paid at your full work rate. So all in all, like I said, I think there's, 12 to 14-hour days is pretty common, all of that considered. And it's about, I don't know, Brandon, you probably know your average, but anywhere between 75 to 90-hour work weeks is about what our technicians work out there.
I would say my lowest work week was probably 60 hours. And then I had one time I was on standby for 8 days due to weather. So it was very nice to still get a check during that. But something else, turnover, or not, before I get to that, what happens if a site is like, hey, we can't have you in today, the string's shut down, but it's a beautiful day and we were able to go to work?
Yeah, so we spoke to, it's the reason of why you can't work. If it's weather, it's 8 hours of standby. If the client calls us out to do a job and then they don't let us get to work, or it's something that from their end is not functioning, and a string is shut down, then we will pay the technicians, if they are able and willing to go to work, and it's not Mother Nature's fault, it's on the client's side, then it's 10 hours of your full work rate for the day, 2 of which, of course, is that overtime pay. So you still get a full day of pay in that scenario.
Cool. So how long do people typically make it in this line of work? I know it's a hard job. It beats down on you, but it can be very rewarding, especially with the time off. But yeah, what's the turnover rate like?
Yeah, so we're pretty low for the industry. Like I said, we try to find technicians that want to do this for a long time. Granted, we don't have a ton of people hanging from ropes ready to retire at 65. We do have a handful of them up there. But, you know, if the industry is, say, about a year and a half on average for turnover, the exact turnover rate is hard to calculate because at the rate at which the turnover rate is hard for me to fully speak to just the rate at which we're growing. But on average, I'd say it's about 5 years for technician leaves, and we've only had, I think in the history of me being here, we've only had 2 technicians that have left to go to a different company in the same industry. So usually it's a lifestyle shift. Somebody's done with traveling or whatever it is that causes them to leave. So I think that's one thing we do is we keep them employed, benefits run year round. There's no seasonal layoffs or anything like that. It's even if you only work 6 months of the year, you're considered a permanent employee because you got all of that work in the 6 months. So benefits continue, et cetera.
Can you elaborate on benefits? That's something that I probably should have had in there earlier. What does Rope Partner offer?
Yeah, so we offer, you know, health, vision, and dental, and 401k plan that'll match. So yeah, it's enough to try to keep people healthy and out there. So, and then squirrel away a little bit for the day you don't want to be on a rope.
Yeah, I would say if you're getting into this line of work, you either need to be good at managing your money or marry an accountant like I did who manages it for me. Going back, I know you have a hard cutoff of about 10 minutes from now, but on the issue of safety, what does Rope Partner do to check gear and stuff like that? Because I know it's teams of 2 and you're managing your own gear and you're out there, and Rope Partner might go years without seeing the gear they issued. So what do y'all do to mitigate that and check that gear is still functional?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, when a technician is hired by a Rope Partner, you are issued your duffel full of your rope access kit. So that is everything minus your ropes. And that is your kit for your career, and you are responsible for your inspection and retirement of your equipment as needed, and requesting new gear as it wears out from our gear manager. So it is expected that daily we do, you know, you're doing your gear inspections with every piece of gear that you are using on a daily basis. You know the history of it because it's been issued to you. It's not being passed around to different people. It's not like you receive a set of rope access gear and don't know the history of it. So that right there in itself, I think is a really important point, is that you know where your gear has been, and you keep it with you. So you're doing your daily inspections, and you also are checking your buddy, and your buddy's checking you, doing buddy checks each day before climbing, making sure you have all the necessary gear on, everything's tightened down, everything's where it should be, beaners are locked,
Muted.
you know, where you have beaners are locked, you know, your harness is cinched up in the proper form, your chin strap is buckled. So it's a second set of eyes that you rely on your partner as well for those buddy checks. In addition to those daily checks, we also every 6 months require a full inspection where you get paid to kind of blow out your kit. You're sent a list. You know, every piece of gear has a unique identifier on it, and so every piece of gear you need to pull apart, look at it, check for wear, function, use, and report back, you know, by a spreadsheet like this is, I rated at this level, basically. So that's every 6 months that every technician spends a few hours doing a thorough gear inspection and goes through and makes sure to retire any additional gear that they maybe didn't catch or haven't used in a while, or something that didn't get into their normal systems for retirement. So yeah, it's kind of our gear management. And on the other side, I mentioned ropes are one that are not issued to a technician. Reason for that, those go back to the warehouse after every job, and the gear department inspects every inch of every rope set once it comes in, and before it's tagged and ready to go back out again, or it gets retired if there's any issue with it. And so yeah, that's what happens with the ropes.
think I've got just one more question. I don't know if you have one to end with, Louis, here in a minute. Just to recap, I know we had some people join late. Why work in wind and who is it for?
Why work in wind? So, I mean, I think that, just to clarify, within rope access as opposed to other rope access industries.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think wind is a renewable energy source. It is a growing market very quickly, and so here in the U.S., there's going to be a lot more wind coming in, and a lot more turbines are going into the ground every year. And so if you want to look at kind of long term, it's a great career to start and get into, because I don't think it's going anywhere for a long time. And so, it's a renewable source. A lot of our technicians are here because, it feels good at the end of the day to contribute to, a renewable source of energy. And so, yeah, that's, why a lot of our technicians get into wind. On another layer, I'd say it's wind is all around the world. So there are opportunities to travel even within Rope Partner outside of the country. And within the U.S., it's kind of neat to go to a place, be able to experience different portions of the country for 5 weeks at a time, and know that you didn't have to move there or necessarily take a vacation there. You go there to work and get to meet all different walks of life and see all the different geography that this country kind of has to offer. So, and the different activities that surround the different parts of the country. So yeah, I think it's a lot why people want to should get into wind or enjoy it.
So Grant, I guess my closing question would be, as rope access technicians that are, just kind of trying to get into the industry, you're somebody who looks at a lot of technicians over the course of a year. And so what kinds of things would you recommend as far as being hireable, being marketable as a technician?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So again, kind of our MO is we want to find people that this lifestyle will work for them in a long term. Again, because it takes, we invest a lot in training and development throughout technician's career. And so I don't want people here just for 1 year or 2 years or something like that. I want to see them here for many years. So a big piece is really an honest assessment, and that's, our hiring process takes months. To go through a series of different interviews and questionnaires, et cetera. And okay, you got me now, sorry. What we're trying to find out for a good technician that will fit well is you're out there with one other person for 5 weeks at a time. And so you want to have a personality that doesn't conflict with our peers and our other technicians. So very kind of similar interests. Play nice in the sandbox with others is a very huge point. Having that type of lifestyle and the activities that you like to do and the amount of work that you want, that work ethic, to be able to complement, what we are looking for as a technician. And so finding people that kind of fit that mold in itself is an interesting challenge. And then on top of that, somebody who can work hard and have those hard skills, which, that could be people coming from construction, other industrial arenas, to honestly engineers sitting behind a desk. It's a dime a dozen, not a dime a dozen, but it's just a random mix bag of technicians' prior careers and where they came from. And there's no direct necessarily correlation to how they excel there. So it's trying to understand, what do you like to do, and what do you think you can do, and it's a interesting vetting process.
So just as a reminder, if you want us to send you a link or an invite to a future video, you can message it there in the chat. But you can also find our past videos on Pigeon Mountain Industries YouTube page. But Grant, I really appreciate you coming on here. It's a lot of great information. I wish there was
thank you.
for me when I was looking into it. because I didn't know a whole lot of wind techs. But I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, if anybody's ever interested in more information, go to our website at ropepartner.com and look us up.
Super. Thanks, Grant. And thanks to you as well, Brandon. It's been super informative and really interesting. So thank you very much.